Warning! Tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, I think this is going to be the last segment on putting this board together. And as you can see, we're almost done. I think it looks really cool. And it's going to sit in the amp like this. So you'll just see these tube sockets and then all these blue components, which it's all color coordinated. And then we put this stuff all on the bottom. And I know the OG one had these capacitors on the top and probably would have had these coupling capacitors on too and kind of snuck them under the edge of this little, the lip here in the top. But I decided to just put all that stuff on the bottom and have a nice clean top with just the resistors and the black tube sockets that I bought. They didn't have black ones, and I trimmed these down so they would be nice and small. They'd be the same size as those ceramic ones, but they're black instead of white, and they match this black board. And so, yeah, I know, I'm kind of being silly with the aesthetics of it, but that's part of what this amp's all about. It's got this, you know, the old school nickel plated chassis instead of the new stainless one, and it's got this one's actually got the riveted tube sockets that a factory built one would have had, but it says Dynaco on it. If you know anything about that, put it in the comments. Somebody that knows these amps was telling me that these riveted sockets are an indicator that this was a factory built unit, but the factory built ones usually said Dynaco on them instead of Dynaco. And this one says Dynaco. But it's also got the really early short stack one. This may be a really early production amp. And so maybe that's what it is. But anyway, I'm hopeful that all this is going to work. I did go through. None of the windings are open on any of the transformer stuff. The choke measure's right. I mean, I think all this old stuff's going to be good to go. And this is the old cloth covered wire output transformers and power transformers. So it's the original stuff. I'm trying to keep it as original looking as I can while still upgrading it where it's going to look good and be functional in a modern system. Like I put banana jacks on the back, and we'll go over all that when I bought their little kit for that. I'm going to put the modern RCA jacks in the front, and I am going to put a volume control where they rounded off this switch hole. I'm going to put an audio note volume pot in it. And I know they make a kit with a stepped attenuator, but I've got a bunch of these volume pots, so I'm just going to use one of those 100K, rotary type pot. And that way, I should be able to just hook my phono stage straight up to this thing and won't need a preamp. So that would be nice, because the phono stage I sell is pretty hot, so I think it'll work fine. So anyway, let's get this board finished up, and I can start getting this amp reassembled. These little bias things, you can't put them in wrong. The 3 pins will only line up one way, but they're going to sit like this with this little notch facing that direction. And then you bend the pins over just a little like that. And then you come in here and with a nice clean tip, you solder those little legs in place. This is another thing that's important to have a really good connection, because if this loses a connection, you can lose the bias on the tube, and that's going to cause all kinds of not good things to happen. That, and then we'll trim, trim, trim. And then you come back with a clean tip and just go One last little flow like that, then you know you got a super good connection. There we go. There we go. So we got our bias spots installed now. The other thing it said to do while you're looking at this is to get your screwdriver and turn these fully counterclockwise so that when you power up the amp, we've got the minimum bias. And that's just a good idea so you don't forget to do it later. So go ahead and turn these all the way counterclockwise as part of this step. And that's a really good tip they had in the instructions. So you can see if we had put the tube sockets in first, some of these solder joints would be harder to get to, especially if you're putting the resistors on the underside of the board. And so I do think this order of installing the parts, and you can always tweak the gaps between the resistors a little bit because this is going to be visible. Like that one's a little. And now we're being just really retentive, but hey, that's what makes it look nice. I think that turned out really cool. So all we got left is the coupling caps, and we'll be ready to install this thing in the amplifier. Okay, so we got the caps ready to solder in place, and let me go ahead and show you what those look like. So we've got these upgrade Mundorf coupling caps, and you want to install them with the lettering like this. From, you read it from the inside to the outside, and then the same thing over on this channel. And that's the correct direction to install those. We've got our little caps here that are the mica caps that are part of the negative feedback circuit. And then the last thing, one of the things I'm doing, he gave me these for the coupling cap between the stages. And I really like the way these Mundorf caps sound in a tube amp. And I don't really want to mix them up and have like this in one coupling cap and then these on the output coupling caps. And so I ordered a pair of 0.1 UF coupling caps to install in the amp in place of these guys. And the instructions say 0.1 UF or 0.22 UF. But given that this coupling cap is working against a 1 meg resistor, there's no fear in the smaller coupling cap causing some sort of frequency loss, or low frequency loss. And so I typically like using as small a coupling cap as I can. So we went with the 0.1 UFs, and they should be here by the end of the week. So we're not ready quite to power this thing up, so we'll be waiting on that. But otherwise, we've got all the parts here. So we put these in, we put those in. So the last thing we've got are these little constant current source solid state dealios, right? And they go in like here, like this. And let me zoom in here and show you. They go in that direction with the flat side towards that side like that. Okay? But the thing is, I want to put them on the underside of the board. And so you wouldn't put it in, if you flip it like upside down and put it in the board the same way this is drawn, you'd have the pins backwards. And so what you need to do is, if it's going to go like that, we want to flip it around like that. And that way the pins are in the same orientation, like ABC, but we've just flipped the device upside down. And again, I'm mainly putting it under there for aesthetic reasons, but also to get it away from the tube heat. I mean, I know the heat rises and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, we're going to put it on the underside like that. And again, it would sit in the board in that direction when you put it on the underside. So we're going to look at the other one, and it would go in like this. And so basically the way to think about it is, we still want this pin towards the front and that pin towards the back. So you would just flip it over like that. And we do the same thing with the phono stages, with the little voltage regulator transistor and those use, and I flip them over. And so yeah, you just go like that, then it's on the underside. And you don't see it. It's a tube amplifier, right? I'm not really into looking at sand. So hopefully later this week, the little 0.1 UF coupling caps will arrive, and we'll be ready to install this board into this amp. So let's get this soldered up. As soon as my soldering iron warms up here, we'll get these last little connections soldered, and we'll have the board finished. And they do sell these boards pre-assembled if you're not confident in your soldering skills, but this is a fairly simple thing to solder up, and it would be good practice for a DIYer to solder up. So here we go. And like most DIY things, if you buy it pre-assembled, I believe it comes with everything on the top, and you don't have the option of doing some of it on the top, some of it on the bottom, or whatever combination that you want to do for your amp. You're at their mercy. Because I'm sure they just have like a pre-made way that they solder them up when they're selling them pre-assembled, and they're not gonna custom do one where you said, well, I want those 5 resistors on the bottom and those 2 on the top, kind of a thing. They're not going to do that for you, so we'll come back and do that. That other resistor will flip the board around, or not resistor, capacitor. And I do like that they're using these really nice mica caps. A lot of times these kits give you those really cheapo, or I consider cheapo, little ceramic disc caps. And it's my personal opinion, those things don't belong in an audio circuit. But I'm sure there's people that would disagree, or point out some really nice sounding amp that's full of those little ceramic disc caps, but I try to avoid them. And there's the whole argument that coupling caps don't make any difference. And people say those little yellow Illinois caps are as good as anything. They're 50 cents. Why are you wasting your money? Yeah, I definitely hear a difference, but and get these 2 soldered up and we will be done. Trim these leads off. Oh, gotta solder our little solid state guys in place. And what I may do is solder that leg. Do one leg at a time. I have seen a mod where people use a higher wattage version of this little device. That comes in a TO220 package. But I'm going to build it with these. One thing, that's what they come with. And see how it works out. I'm sure that these work fine with the circuit built as it's designed. And we're going to do our little dress up. And these are a little close together, so make real sure that you don't bridge these, because that would definitely not be good. But there we go. Here's a little tubes for hi-fi board, all started up with our custom caps. And like I said, we'll get the Mundorf 0.1 UF caps, and they go across here, and we'll put them on the underside, so they'll go like from here to there, and from here to there, and yeah, or no, from here to there, from here to there, from there to there. But I'll show you that when we get that done. And yeah, this looks like a good place to wrap this up. Well, that pretty much wraps up getting this board assembled. And like I said, I'm still waiting on I decided to use some 0.1 UF Mundorf coupling caps rather than the little poly ones that they set in the kit. I mean, I did get the upgrade kit for the 0.22 UF Mundorf caps for the output tubes, but I wanted to put Mundorf caps between the stages as well, because I feel like that's probably somewhere you're going to hear the cap too. And I want to give this every chance that I can for it to really sound good. So we got those coming. Maddie Sound should have those here in a day or so, and I can finish up with that little part. And I think this turned out really nice. So anyway, I have been working on the power supply stuff. I'm going to go over that in the next video, kind of the basics of what you may not have to mess with on yours, especially if you've got a later model amp. You know, you might want to change this, you know, whatever they call it, the multi-cap thing, the big tower cap. You might want to put a new one of those in it. And if it's got any old resistors in it, you might want to, check those and make sure they're still in spec. But with this Tubes for Hi-Fi board, like all the resistors and stuff are on this board, so you're in the caps. So you're replacing everything, and so you got all new, the stuff that matters. And all you're left with is the iron, the tube sockets, and if you got bolt down tube sockets, it might be worth putting a new one of those in too. You can decide. I'm leaving these in because they were riveted in, so I just cleaned them up as best as I could, and hopefully they're going to be fine. So anyway, again, I know this is getting old saying this. I'm not being sponsored by Tubes for Hi-Fi. I'm a customer, bought their board, and I'm going to show you guys how it worked out. And so far, I've been really happy with the quality of the board. It seems really nice. The circuit looks really nice. He asked me not to share the circuit, and so probably not going to talk a whole lot about that. I mean, I may read a little bit off of his description about like what this circuit is and how it works. And I'm not going to tell you where you can find it, but the circuit's on the internet already. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but I guess he's worried about people copying the circuit, but I'm pretty sure people are already doing that. So anyway, I'm going to honor his wishes and not show the schematic or go into detail about the circuit. If we do end up doing any mods to the circuit later, I might show just like, here's the section that I'm changing, and like, Photoshop erase or black out the rest of it. So I want to honor what he asked me to do. And so anyway, this is going along great, and this has been a fun project. I don't know why this thing kind of pulled at my heartstring, but there's just something about this amp that's really cool to me. And I guess it's from that same kind of 1950s vintage stuff that I love cameras from that period too. And most of my camera collection is cameras from like the early 1950s to the early 1960s. I mean, that's kind of what I focused on. And I do have a few things from the 70s, but I really like those pre-meter mechanical cameras, and this kind of fits into that whole same deal. And I also want to stick with a tube rectifier. I'm going to show y'all how I'm going to take some load off this rectifier. And I know there's that yellow pin mod, and it probably doesn't impact the sound, but I still just like the idea of having a straight up tube rectifier, and I think it can be done and not blow up like they seem to do a lot in these amplifiers. And so anyway, we'll go over that in the next video, and I'm going to show kind of where I'm at kind of generally with the rest of the circuit in that video. But I think we're done with the board, and wasn't too hard. Hopefully it's not too intimidating, and you folks that watched me do it, it's definitely a little slower doing it on camera than you could probably do it just sitting down, but there's no reason to get in a hurry. This is a hobby. We're not, especially you guys, you're not doing this for money, and I'm not really either. Even when I'm building amps that I sell, I just sit down and take my time and enjoy myself, because that's part of the fun of this hobby. Is it's relaxing and cathartic to just sit down with a soldering iron and some parts and build something, and make it custom the way you want it to look when you're done, and have something at the end that's uniquely yours. And to me, that's part of the biggest part of the fun of this hobby, is being able to do that, is to put your own little touch on stuff. So don't be afraid to kind of change things up a little bit if you think that's the way you want it to look. So anyway, hope you're enjoying this content. If you are, please subscribe. Please like the video. Need more of that. That helps the algorithm stuff. And comment below how you think this is going. What you think of the aesthetics of my, black tube sockets with putting all the blue stuff on the top. And if you think it's silly that I put the brown, the tan resistors on the inside because they didn't match these blue ones. That is kind of silly, but I just think it looks cool that all that stuff's blue and black. I think that turned out really nice. So Anyway, the next video is going to be more about the amp itself. As soon as I get those other coupling caps, I'm going to get the hardware, show you how to bolt this down, how to wire up the board to the rest of the amplifier, and I pretty much got the power supply finished up, and I've got the old wiring all cleaned up and got all that junk out. And you can see at the start of the next video, I've got a little segment about all the stuff I pulled out of this amp. It's crazy what was inside this thing. So until then, have a nice day.